And here we are again, folks. This is Aristo. For those of you that remember him, he opens some great discussions, or we've had some great discussions together over the years, actually. I just came out of a meeting at the Jewish synagogue in which I said I have to go meet Aristomenes Christos Papageorgopoulos. I wanted to get his name in there for everybody to hear before I exited the meeting.
Gives you an aura of mystery and importance. Who is this? You know?
Well, I mean, it's in a Jewish synagogue. The meeting was in a Jewish synagogue, and there were people from various, half the people maybe had skull caps on, which means they were Jewish, and it was just men. So it was an interesting discussion, but today Aristo wants to talk about, you go ahead and give your idea of a topic and just take it away. And I'll interject as I feel, as we usually do.
Okay, Ron, thank you. This time I shall try to, I'm modifying my way of presenting things, because I understand that, you know, if I go too fast or too slow or too animated, it's easy to get lost. Usually these topics, the way it works is through my mind works. The way my mind works is through a dialectic. Basically, I jump from one position to another position to a third position, and it's as if, you know, there's a string tied to me. So I kind of, you know, carry the thread over through all these positions, and eventually I come full circle.
So it's a dialectic then? Or
yeah, it's polylectic. It's polylectic. Yeah, dialectic just means it's like a dialogue. I'm dialoguing with what I say. Because this is unscripted, as viewers know. And sometimes these topics, they seem obvious, but there's more depth to it than we think. One of the reasons that that I sit here and I do talk about this is to get over certain assumptions that we may have. Certain assumptions, for example, about cliche type things. I mean, we've gotten used to the way things are presented so much with the internet and television. We're presented with these ideas, with these memes. You know, oh, love and light. Oh, the fifth dimension from the New Age thing. Oh, you know, a little compassion. Oh, you know, tough it out. Oh, coping mechanisms. Oh, you know, things like that. Things that are like pop psychological, pop spiritual, pop religious, you know, pop goes the weasel, et cetera, you know, and it's easy. And the thing is, we're giving these things, we parrot them. And I don't mean, again, part of me is very angry all the time to have to apologize every 5 minutes, because there are people who get pissed off. Last time I had somebody say blasphemy because I said God was selfish. You know, but if you stop to think, and again, I'm jumping again, but it's going to dovetail. If you stop to think, the monotheistic definition of deity is just singularity, nothing else. That's it. So what else is it going to be but selfish? Because if it's selfless, there's nothing left. It's nihilism. You know, it kind of like a digital thing. It's either there or it's not. So you cannot, saying that, then you're projecting human attributes onto divinity, and that is blasphemy. And not just human attributes, but petty human attributes. So the thing is, even in the Bible, and especially the Old Testament, they say God is a jealous God. Now, people say, oh, how terrible, how could they say such a thing? Well, are you sure this is the same jealousy that a regular human being has? You know, or whenever they attribute anything, is it really the same thing? When the Bible talks about the Garden of Eden, talks about a serpent, is it really a snake? Or is it a snake-like being? Or is it a metaphor for something else? In India, the snake people, they call them Nagas, are basically self-realized individuals. You know, yogis, saints, because they've awakened the serpent power. Or dragons in China, or wizards, or people who can perform magic. They're also saints. They're self-realized individual. These type of things have a metaphoric expression. But people, and you know, it's easy and it's fun sometimes, and you can vent, and it really gets your jollies to be able to generalize instead of having to specify in these things. Well, I don't know if it's people. But I keep running into expressions, and on the internet you can run into 5 people out of 5 million, and that's enough to screw your life. You know, to traumatize you forever. You know, just 5 nasty people, and it seems like, you know. So essentially, what I want to say is that we need to think. We need to be able to take a deep breath and stop and think, and not just cognitively, not just analytically. So I'd like to present some of these thoughts and some of these ideas as, I won't say an example, but as a way of what I mean, a presentation, because all of them are the same theme. They're discernment and thinking. Thinking with your heart, feeling, thinking, feeling, the feeling.
Yeah, feeling and thinking go together, and if you leave one out and you diverse it, you get very unbalanced very easily.
Exactly, and it's important to specify that thinking does not have to be verbal. You don't have to talk to yourself when you're thinking. It can be imagery, and it can be felt thought. You see, the difference between feeling, emotive feeling, is that it has tremendous strength, passion, intensity, but because of the force, it's very difficult for refined movements. Then you have a feeling that's more refined. It's more like thinking. It's almost like a language unto itself, a sensate internal language, an intuitive language. So you have the spectrum of refined, fine threads of felt thought that weave very fine gossamer tapestries that can basically flow and enter a very detailed patterns of realization. You can see it that way. And then you have these coarse, thick, and that's not a bad thing, but they're strong and they're powerful and they move, and that's needed too. The whole range, you know, from deep, dense emotion, powerful emotion, deep emotion, or you can have a depth of refined thinking. And if you really, and you say, so why are you telling us this? Well, if you can imagine it, you can find yourself doing it. Because we often do things that we don't recognize we're doing. But if we recognize that we're doing them even a little bit, say, oh, isn't that what this crazy guy with the big name was talking about? You know, maybe it's something like that, you know. And if you do that, then you remember it. And next time you even are a little bit prompted, you'll reinforce it. And if you reinforce it, you'll create what they call neuroplastic adaptation. That means your brain will develop more connections leading to a repeat of that kind of thing. It's like muscles. Your brain is a muscle, you know. You only, instead of making the fibers stronger and bigger like you do in your physical muscles, you actually increase the connectivity between all of the points of the brain. And that means you have more possibilities. You know, there's a theory in quantum mechanics. Most people are aware, especially the proverbial New Agers, of the many worlds hypothesis. Basically, when you have probabilities, you make a decision. You're going to cross. You want to go left or go right. Well, if you go left, then in some other universe, there's a Ron Van Dyke that goes right, and so on and so forth. Every choice you make basically splits you into a different universe. And some people say, well, physically, that would require a lot of energy. I mean, you create a new universe as you go along. I mean, the split, you know, and then philosophically, it's meaningless because no matter what choice we make, you know, every other choice is made anyway. So we might as well stop making, why even make effort? I mean,
that doesn't resonate with me as being true. I don't know how you feel about it, but I don't agree. Another Ron Van Dyke somewhere else doing the exact opposite of what I'm doing.
Exactly.
I find that really hard to fathom.
Exactly. I agree. That's what I'm saying. But it's more familiar. There's another one called the many minds hypothesis, however. That it says that you have the same split happening. However, there's only one physical manifestation of choice. All the rest are energetic, spiritual, mental, dynamics. It's like you have the infinitude of all probabilities as software, but only one manages to be siphoned into physical manifestation as the choice you make. The other ones, however, still exist as possibilities that haven't manifested as some kind of intentionality. So mentally, you can have the many world hypothesis going on, and every time you make a choice, the choice you didn't make still hovers somewhere as a kind of mental thought form type thing. And it creates its own, connected to a universe of its own, but it's not physical. I don't know if you can call it spiritual, call it astral, call it whatever, but it can still come around and influence the physical plane. It's still there in some way. It's almost like you every time there's a random number generator on your computer that creates zeros and ones. So every time you tell your computer to do something, it also creates the option of doing the opposite and storing it in some memory bank that you don't know about. And, so I'm saying this because we never lose the choices we make. When we make, nothing is inevitable. We can always backtrack. We don't, which doesn't mean that we can automatically change the choices, but you're never free of all the possibilities that can be you. You can never run away.
I'm at a place where I'm questioning a lot of the ways of thinking, as you are very aware. I'm at that point, especially with the loss of my home, of questioning everything, especially the role of God or divinity. But anyway,
exactly.
Keep going.
Well, the thing is, there's a difference between questioning and rejecting completely.
Yeah.
Because when you reject, you come to a definite conclusion. You don't say, well, this is my opinion, I reject it. You say, this is a fact, I don't want it anymore, no matter what, get out. I don't believe it. From here on in, I'm going to live my life without this element. But as I was saying before, the reason I'm saying this thing of the many minds hypothesis is that, and there is a kind of physics justification for all of this, but obviously I'm not going to get into it. But the important thing is that existence has far many more options than we think. And just because we go left doesn't mean that the implications of going right, if they should prove that they're better, I wish I had gone right, well, you can still tap into what would have happened. The energy doesn't go away. And at the same time, well, isn't the same true for, if I do a good act, isn't the implication of the evil act I could have done, isn't that going to hang over me? Yes. Because to put it in religious terms, just because you don't sin today doesn't mean you're not going to sin tomorrow. Just because you don't have a temptation today to sin, so to speak, and I don't want people to come and say, well, I don't believe in sin. Well, this is just an example. So it doesn't mean that all of a sudden you will feel an inversion of yourself, a reversion. You would say, well, I thought I overcame this terrible habit or this terrible thing or this terrible inclination. Why is it coming back to me? I thought I was faithful to my beloved or whatever. Why do I feel like I want to, whatever. And some would say, well, that probability is still there and is influencing. Well, how do I cut it off? Well, the idea here is that you shouldn't cut it off. Because if you cut anything off, it's amputation. If you destroy the possibility of psychopathy, you can never be free because you're not making a choice. It's almost like, well, I can choose to close my eyes or open them. That's freedom. But what if you take my eyes away? Then I won't be able to choose to close my eyes or open them. I will be blind. I will be forced to always have darkness. Or what if you peel my eyelids off and force me to constantly see, and put some kind of film so my eyeballs don't dry up or something. But, and, people are so literal sometimes, and get into the stupid habits with the internet of having to cover your ass wherever you go, and people that, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend. Oh, excuse me, But it's like that, and that's what I wanted to also talk about. But it dovetails with the previous because it is freedom. Freedom is being able to spherically, like you said, polylectically, to use a new term, to be able to jump from one aspect to its opposite, to the midpoint, to the top, to the bottom of anything you want to do. When I make a choice, I want to know what the implications are to the best of my ability. But more importantly, I want to know my motive for that choice, because I may not have all the information. I may not have anything. I may be deluded, but I do know myself, or at least I can know myself. So I want to say that freedom means having these options, and freedom means being tempted, and at the same time being inspired, at the same time being blessed and being cursed. All of these possibilities exist. And so instead of doing away with the possibility, what you do is strengthen your power of making a choice. In that way, the form of the possibility, the manifest form, the potential of it, does not sit there ready to get you around the corner. It just loses its coherence and blends into the ether, so to speak, but it can always come out if you give it a chance or an opportunity. You may need it. You may need the temptation to remind you that you might be repressing something because maybe you want to be too good. There is such a thing as being too good. You know, living up to an artificial ideal of goodness, for example. That's what I mean. And that is not realistic for who you are. Because you might be so good that you're negating your own self. You might be self-sacrificing. You end up killing yourself to help everybody. And then everybody thinks like you. They'll all kill themselves to help each other. And then everybody's dead. You know, it's like that. You say, oh, no, goodness, if we were all good, you know, and do away with any kind of, you know, not to mention good and bad are relative, you know. And I'm not defining this in terms of doing harm manifestly. I'm defining it in terms of how people usually define it. The psychological tendency to desire to do harm, to desire to sin, so to speak, to desire to cause suffering or fragmentation or whatever, to desire to do something that may be sociopathic or psychopathic. These things are completely different than actually manifesting desire, which the physicist would say collapsing the wave function. The physicist says that you have this wave, basically a superposition of possibilities, which means there is no such thing. It's like white light, has all the colors of the spectrum in it, but you cannot discern any color from another. But as soon as you put a little prism or a filter, poof, you end up with a certain color, depending on the filter. That is collapsing the spectrum of possibility down into one. Well, what happens to the rest of them? Well, they're still there. They're in the white light. And the white light still has the color red, for example, that you're seeing. It's still in the white light. You just have a version of it down to you. So all possibilities need to be open to us. We should not, if in the sense of maturity, and yes, everything is an opinion in some way or another, unless you're omniscient. I mean, you can argue there are no facts. I keep hearing about this anymore. Because people don't like to be bullied and don't like to have fingers pointed at them. They don't like to be told what to do. They don't like facts thrown in their face. They don't like scientific authority telling them because science says this, you have to do that. So sometimes people, in my honest opinion, tend to emphasize the fact that we really don't know anything. But that's not even a fact, because we might know something and we might not even know that we know that. So the title, and maybe this isn't the title, but it's the meme, shall we say, that you can convert into a title, is about tolerance and intolerance as an example. Tolerance and intolerance are opposites. And we say, oh, we should be tolerant. And then somebody goes, well, then that leads to political correctness or an extreme. And, or we, you know, I reserve the right to be intolerant of some things. You're intolerant of psychopathy. You're intolerant of, you know, the demonization that's going on. The demons.
Well, I'm intolerant of people that have malevolent intent for others to be in charge of everybody. I'm intolerant of that.
Yeah, and some people will tell you, oh, Ron, you must be more loving, you must be more tolerant of everything, you must accept it. And again, I'm saying, well, in my honest opinion, again, with the more mature attitude, meaning a more thoughtful, a more experienced, a more globally coherent, globally immersive, you know, let your thoughts become feeling oriented. Don't just use conventional logic. Don't just define situation with facts that are conventionally logical. Use logic of the heart, but not the cliche heart. Go even deeper than that. So here's an example. You have tolerance and intolerance. The thing is that this is a spectrum again. It's an amorphous thing. And when you make a choice, you collapse the spectrum, the wave function, into one thing. Now, you can go, ultimately, one side is extreme tolerance, where you just become a rug and accept everything, and confuse that with loving everything. It's not necessarily the same thing. And the other one is the extreme intolerant, where everything is rejected. So an extreme yes and no, and that would be a binary type of situation. But instead, you move the radio band somewhere in the middle, or somewhere toward the left, somewhere toward the right, and pick the radio station that represents the conditions that correspond to your truth, to your discernment, to your felt sense that, okay, this is coherent, this is resonant with me right now, and I can go with this, and this will lead me somewhere where my freedom means something, where the choice I made actually means something. It's a creation. Every choice we make is a creation. This is how we create our reality. Every choice has consequences, which is a rather ominous word, but has implications, which can be another ominous word. It has results, which is more neutral, you know. But every choice may be a blessing, it may be a curse, but it is still a reality we are creating because we made that choice. Now imagine these so-called tyrants and whatever, they want to take away that choice. Not the choice, but the capacity to make it. I saw a video today, and it was this black man who essentially talked to another black man in a car and told him, all right, people, I'm going to save you, and if the cops stop you, this is what you're supposed to do unless you want to go to jail. So sit there, have your driver's license, have everything right on the dashboard, put both hands on the steering wheel, lower the thing, don't talk, don't reach in your back pocket, assume the position, bow down, kiss their ass, and have plenty of mouthwash in case they ask you to perform certain, oral practices on them. That's my addition. But because it seemed like, what, are we being taught to submit? I'm surprised there's no other African Americans or whatever, saying, hey man, look at this. Yeah, I mean, I know some people on Facebook would usually go whenever they see a black person, having a certain thing. See, if it was a white person, they wouldn't be doing this, or something like that. So I was just wondering, so is anybody going to come up and say, look at this? Why is a black man having another black man in the car giving advice of what to do if the cops stop you? Basically the assumption is, well, maybe the cops stop black people, or maybe this is a thoughtful person. Maybe I'm just thinking in a cliche manner. Maybe my whole perception is stuck into that political correctness, or we're looking for that kind of thing. Because ultimately for me, take the color factor away. I'm a person. Those are people. And so I'm being told in a practical sense what to do, what body language to show, just like, two animals or two dogs sniffing each other's butts. The dominant dog is going to hurt the submissive dog if the submissive dog doesn't roll on its belly and show its belly. So on the one hand, I am seeing these people tell me how to roll and show my belly. On the other hand, they're very well-meaning and they want to protect me. And if I'm a family person, for example, I need to come home to my family. Well, whether I am or not, I want to come home, and continue my life. I don't want to end up in jail or beat up or whatever. So there is that kind of dilemma. How do I evaluate this? Well, my way to do it is that, well, it could be one, it could be the other. It doesn't matter. I still have a choice. Right now, I need to know how to move through a situation where this meme is now prominent, where I have to worry about the police, shooting me if I twitch my nose the wrong way. And you know how that feels. The cops coming in and just because you don't say the right thing, like some people say, or just because you don't do the right body language, it's not about saying anymore. And I can understand that. You help these people do their job the right way. If they stop you and whatever, then you move on.
Some people say when a cop is in uniform and trying to talk to you, keep your mouth shut. Don't say anything at all. And they tell you right up front, anything you say can and will be used against you.
Exactly. And, it says, make sure the radio isn't playing, make sure this, make sure that, this is serious. In other words, and the guy, and actually I was, some of these videos, they basically write what the important parts that the person's saying. And so I had the sound turned off so I could see the person's body language. And it was a body language to me of fear. You know, I'm just doing this for your own good, people, and please. And then the other guy was doing this, and he scratched his nose. Oh, what are you doing? Don't scratch your nose. Don't do this. Make sure the boom box is turned off or whatever. Make sure you don't have your wallet in your back pocket, because if you go to reach for it, he can kill you, he can drag you out, he can beat you up, and he will be in his rights to do so, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what do? People encounter these things, and they are frightening situations. So the thing is...
Actually, you said this was two black men discussing this, or a black person making the presentation. And
exactly.
Unfortunately, in this country, blacks are picked on just because they're black, and especially males. It is like there, but it's a generalization.
It is like that, and it's a generalization, but it's not only like that. It used to be a lot more like that. When I was in the United States in the 80s, it used to be much, much more. But at the same time, I'll tell you, my friend was dragged out of his car for no reason by a black cop, and his head was stepped on. A cop is a cop, or a person is a person. There are people who are crazy, power hungry, or they're taught this way. I mean, from what they told us, and this was a college police person, and somebody who was really, really buff, worked out, and maybe taking steroids. There's a lot of fact. Now you have a lot of people coming from a war where they did who knows what to women and children, and given a police uniform. And so does that mean all the cops are like that, as anybody would say? It doesn't mean that. But I'm talking about the mentality. So the question is, what can we do? Fortunately, for example, for me in Greece, I don't experience that yet. I don't experience the police being this way. There's a whole other bunch of problems here. But I mean, they will throw you in jail if you don't pay your taxes, if you don't have car insurance, stuff like that. But to just stop you and pull you out and beat up on you and stuff like that for spitting the wrong way or not wearing your seatbelt or making the wrong move, I haven't heard about it yet. But things vary culture to culture, and the United States has this thing about gun ownership, I think, which they're trying to do away with.
Yeah.
Everywhere else.
If they ever succeed, if the government ever succeeds in taking guns away from the people, the United States will collapse. The only thing that's preventing the tyranny from taking place in the U.S. is because the U.S. is the most heavily armed civilian population on Earth.
Especially for the U.S., because the U.S. is the military arm of the New World Order, as you say. Now, maybe that will change in the future. Maybe they're moving for China to be the military arm, or Russia to be the military arm. I'm not sure. But the point is, right now, the U.S. has a militaristic type, among other things. Its tradition is militaristic in so many ways. Even the media is militaristic. Even the tough guy attitude is militaristic, or the tough woman attitude now. Now, I'm saying all of these things because you came back from the synagogue, and, a lot of people bring up even the word Jew or not Jew on the internet. So there's a whole thing associated there with tolerance versus intolerance. The black and, black people, there's tolerance versus intolerance. The gay people, there's tolerance versus intolerance. You have this issue back and forth, and it's thrown in our face like a weapon against us. We're faced with dilemmas, and we keep running into either or solutions or responses. And so take everything I said before and as examples. It's not the discussion here. These are examples. And so I want to say that the responses need not be either or. You don't have to go, oh, this is intolerable. This guy over here is telling me to submit, or completely sit around and justify the situation by saying, oh, just relax. I mean, the guy's just warning you and he's looking out for you. And so he's a black guy, so what? Black people get more, get stopped more or whatever. But he's looking out for everybody and this and that. And it's like both are true. More than likely, both are true. You have these people anywhere the people can be, benign, or they can be malignant. They can be hurtful, or they can be not. Race, color, or creed, it doesn't matter. We don't even have to bring up statistically the white man is the worst of them all. I don't know. I don't even think so. Not, at least not in my opinion.
5 minutes.
5 more minutes. See, and a lot of people go, oh, it's not enough time. Aristo just develops these things, and as soon as he gets to the good point, 5 minutes, oops, sorry.
Well, if you go over, I mean, I'll just shut the timer off.
No, but I've been going around this because it's important to get examples, and it's important to get many, many examples. And you may vaguely remember some of these examples. You may not remember all of them, everything that I've said, but just the feel, see? The example creates an emotional response. And so we're being forced in critical situations, a crisis, a cross. So a cross has two lines perpendicular to each other, and they force you in a dot, in a position, in a bullseye, and an X marks the spot. And so they're corralling us into what you call a cul-de-sac, or an impasse, a dead end. So we have no choice but whatever's offered. The old saying, problem, reaction, solution. They give us a problem, our reaction is either this or that. We're screwed whether we say this or that, and so they present the solution. They think for us. And I say, well, take a step back and look at where you are still free. First of all, you may say, look, I'm brainwashed. I may not be completely free. I may not be free at all. But if you are even wondering whether you are free or not, that means you are free to some extent. You are free enough to wonder. And that's a big deal. That's a good place to start. So you can step back and say, well, it doesn't have to be both, either or. It can be both and. It doesn't have to be intolerance versus tolerance. It can be, well, both of them, Why should I hate Muslims? There is no such thing as a Muslim. That's a convention. It's a label. It's just a bunch of dogma. It's a meme. These are people,
Right.
Like I said, with the quantum mechanical stuff, the mental stuff precipitates into one tangible reality according to this many minds hypothesis, which means that people are the tangible. Events physically are the tangible. The other things, they're memes, they're mental things. They're true or false or whatever, they're still mental. They're very flexible. You can choose. You can actually take two mental things, two ideas, and fuse them together into a third idea with the best of both according to how you understand it. It's very, very flexible. So, and we agree on the one thing. We agree on both and. We may not agree on how the both and happens. It doesn't have to be equal parts, but that's how we're created. So I'm saying, learn to think in terms of both and. Transcend the polarities of tolerance versus intolerance, black versus white, even man versus woman. You don't have to go gender bender if you reject the whole polarization of gender, behavior, whatever, You don't have to go transsexual. You don't have to go hermaphroditic. You don't have to go asexual. You don't have to go anything. You can just say, look, man, every case is evaluated on its own merit according to what my heart says, according to what my feelings say, because every case is a world unto itself. Every choice I make is a contribution to a universal reality, and a universal reality in itself. Because I believe in the holographic universe principle, which means that the whole is embedded in every parts. So the universe is in every choice I make. All possibilities are there. They may not be manifest, they may be repressed, they may be difficult to get, they may even seem impossible to get to. However, it's not completely blocked off. So synthesize, analyze and synthesize in your own way. You can question. Questioning means that you're just saying, okay, where does this go? I don't know. It's admitting that you don't really know, which means, okay, if I don't know where this path leads, why don't I just walk on it and find out? So I don't know if it's right to put my hands on the steering wheel and submit, but maybe if I do it and see how I feel, not knock on wood, doesn't mean you have to go into that situation, but if you simulate it for yourself, or if you talk to other people who've done it, if you empathize, and see how you feel and understand how you feel. Look at the meaning through the feeling sense. Your feelings are not just some new age mumbo jumbo crap. Your feelings are your sixth sense, literally. You don't have to go into psychic or telepathy or stuff like that. All you have to do is understand the sensate gut-heart dynamic that is also connected to the head. And these feelings can be refined or they can be intense, but they are the sixth sense. You know how your world turns into if you blind yourself, or even if you lose your sense of smell, things, are not as comfortable as they were with your sense of smell. So imagine your sixth sense being gone, but you don't know it's gone. You're just constantly troubled and uncomfortable and knowing something's wrong and you're confused, but maybe it's because you're not using the sixth sense. And for everything anybody can say, including me, there may be 1,000 people or 2 people or even 1 person coming out contradicting it by saying, I use my sixth sense, and so I have this sixth sense and I am the one telling the truth and I disagree with you. And that's the way of the internet. And a mature person, an experienced person who has evaluated these things and seen what works and what doesn't, for me, it doesn't work to flip out about something like that. But flipping out is very natural. It may even be necessary to be able to process the situation. So again, tolerance versus intolerance. Where is the golden mean? Where is your golden mean? If you could abide by your golden mean and your golden rule, then you would be walking in balance. Remember the theme of the previous video, is balance is the key. So find your golden mean by making the choices that are right for you and make sure they're right for you. And don't just fake it and say, well, how do I know? Well, it's going to eventually be obvious down the line if you're faking it. Unless you're in denial, and then it'll be obvious way down the line when you run into a brick wall the size of the universe. Because you cannot fake it forever. You will never make it if you keep faking it. You can try many, many options. You can play at things. It's different than faking it, than lying to yourself. But then again, sometimes we do lie to ourselves and we don't even know it. And then life gives us lessons. And sometimes these are not good lessons. Sometimes we're not lying to ourselves, but we take it for granted that what we assume is the truth. Or, for example, in your case, all of those religious dogmas that have been drilled into you since infancy practically have never went away. They're there, and they've affected your life. So even if you say, well, I don't see we create our own reality. Well, look, imagine if you have that indoctrination, then the only reality you're going to end up creating is whatever that says. The devil rules. That's it. In your reality, the devil rules. Now, the same thing may apply for me, but for a different reason. But again, we're all brainwashed. Maybe your religion brainwashes you. Maybe my science brainwashes me, or my spirituality, or my whatever. I mean, we're guided to be brainwashed so we can't make our choices. So it's imperative that we step back without detaching, because then we're alienated. Step back and find that balance. And one way to find balance is to move toward what you might call a philosophy of both and. A synthesis, but not always in the same generalized way of clumping everything 100%. There is discernment involved. There's filtration involved. Play with it. So then, even if the cop stops you, you can actually not enjoy it, but just see it as part of you exercising your freedom in a different way. You're exercising the freedom to realize how the matrix works and how you can respond to it without getting screwed, but taking maybe one step toward liberation that can be manifested. Make it a project. See, you don't have to play their game, but they don't have to know that you're not playing their game. That's something that is worth thinking about, in my honest opinion. Okay, Ron, I guess.
I stopped the timer some time ago.
Yeah, but it's just the idea that there's a timer, Bert, and then all of a sudden you have to, sometimes it shocks you, but it didn't go that over. So, I think
it's fine. Anyway, thank you, Aristo, as always. I enjoyed it. I know it's getting up on you closer to your bedtime, I imagine.
Well, that's only 8:30
You go to bed really late. Like my son.
Yeah.
My son's bedtime is the middle of the night sometimes.
Yeah, I think I go to bed when you wake up. Let's put it that way, something like that.
Okay.
So,
well, I appreciate it, and thank you very much.
Okay, no problem. And I hope this time that nobody was offended by anything I've said, and I have not uttered any blasphemous phrases to the faithful.
Bye-bye now, and namaste.
Namaste.